You've probably heard it before. If someone loves you, they'll make it obvious. But what if their obvious looks different? What if the very thing that feels like distance is actually the deepest sign of devotion? Let's talk about the ones who love quietly, the avoidants. These are the souls who've built walls not because they don't want love, but because they've felt too deeply. Somewhere along the way, love became linked to pain, vulnerability became danger, and closeness meant losing control. So, what's the one sign an avoidant is secretly in love with you? It's this. They fight their own nature for you. Think about that. Love for them is not effortless. It's a battlefield within. Every time they let you in a little more, every time they stay instead of run, every time they silence the voice that says, don't get too close. That is love. That is courage in motion. See, love isn't proven in perfection. It's proven in growth. When someone begins to expand beyond their comfort zone for you, you are witnessing a miracle. You're seeing transformation happen in real time. The avoidant doesn't say, I love you in words. They say it in the way they remember what matters to you, in the way they show up when things break down, in the way they allow your presence to soften what once was guarded. And maybe that's the greatest lesson we can learn about love. Not everyone loves the same way. Some express it in poetry and passion, others in protection and patience. The real question is, can you see beyond the form to recognize the truth behind it? When you love someone who's avoidant, you're being invited into divine work. You're being asked to hold space for healing, not control it. You're being called to embody love that doesn't demand, but inspires. Because your energy, your grounded, compassionate presence becomes the mirror that tells them you are safe to love. And when that happens, when an avoidant begins to open, not because you pushed them, but because they chose to, that is not just love. That is transformation. It's love transmuting fear. It's the human spirit remembering its own capacity to trust again. So if you're wondering whether they care, look for the small breakthroughs, the text that comes out of nowhere, the eye contact that lingers, the moment they let you see behind the armor. That's the sign. That's the whisper of love saying, I'm still here, even when I don't know how to be. Love is not about perfection. It's about progress. And when you see someone fighting their fears to love you, not flawlessly, but faithfully, know this. You are witnessing one of life's most sacred revolutions. Love that heals doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stays. And for the avoidant heart, staying is the loudest I love you there is. Emotional resistance is one of the most misunderstood behaviors in relationships, especially when it comes from someone with avoidant tendencies. When an avoidant person begins to withdraw, create distance, or seem detached, the natural reaction of their partner is to interpret it as rejection. It feels personal, like a message that says you don't matter. But what's really happening beneath the surface is often the complete opposite. That distance, that silence, that pullback, it's not a reflection of the absence of emotion, but rather the intensity of it. Avoidants are often individuals who have learned somewhere along their journey that emotional closeness equals risk. Maybe they grew up in an environment where vulnerability was met with disappointment, inconsistency, or even abandonment. They internalized a core belief that being emotionally open means being unsafe. So they built walls. They trained themselves to manage pain by managing proximity to others and to their own feelings. Over time, this becomes second nature. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they've become experts at not showing what they feel. When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to care deeply, something powerful happens inside them. Their heart wants to move closer, but their nervous system says, danger ahead. Love, connection, and emotional intimacy stir up sensations of exposure, vulnerability, and loss of control, the exact things they've spent a lifetime avoiding. What looks like coldness is often a survival mechanism. It's a form of emotional self-protection designed to keep them from re-experiencing the pain that once broke them. So, when you're on the receiving end of that resistance, it's important to understand this isn't about you not being enough. This isn't about you doing something wrong. It's about them encountering something so powerful, love, that it threatens to dismantle their entire defense system. The avoidant doesn't resist because they don't care. They resist because they care too much. And that care brings fear to the surface. Fear of dependence, fear of rejection, fear of losing the sense of control that has kept them emotionally safe. Imagine standing in front of a door you've kept locked for years, maybe decades. Behind it lies everything you've suppressed, the longing, the tenderness, the heartbreak, the hope. And then someone comes along, someone who makes you feel seen, someone who touches something in you that you thought was gone. Suddenly, that door begins to shake. The light starts seeping through the cracks, and even though a part of you wants to open it, another part screams, "Don't!" That's what's happening inside the avoidant. Their emotional resistance isn't rejection. It's the trembling before the breakthrough. To the one who loves an avoidant, this is where understanding becomes your greatest power. When you interpret resistance as rejection, you react with your own fear, pursuing, pressuring, or retreating in return. But when you see resistance as a symptom of overwhelm rather than indifference, you shift from reaction to compassion. You stop taking their distance personally and start recognizing it as a sign of emotional overload. It doesn't mean you should tolerate disconnection indefinitely, but it does mean you can hold space for their process without abandoning your peace. And for the avoidant, this resistance is not a flaw to be ashamed of. It's a signal of deep emotion trying to break free. Love is not exposing them to danger. It's inviting them into healing. Every time they resist the urge to run, every time they sit with discomfort instead of shutting down, they're rewiring a belief that has held them captive. They're learning that connection can be safe, that vulnerability can coexist with strength, that love doesn't have to destroy, it can rebuild. When you look deeper, emotional resistance becomes sacred ground. It's the threshold between fear and freedom. It's love testing its own capacity to endure, not through grand gestures, but through quiet inner battles no one else sees. The person who resists you most fiercely may be the one feeling the most. Because love, real love, doesn't just melt walls instantly, it challenges them, exposes them, and slowly teaches the heart that it no longer needs them. So, emotional resistance isn't the absence of love. It's the storm that precedes its awakening. It's the space where fear and desire meet, collide, and learn to coexist. And when you can see it for what it truly is, a sign of emotional depth rather than distance, you no longer chase or retreat. You simply hold space for transformation, knowing that even resistance can be love in disguise. Even though avoidants often create distance in relationships, their connection to the ones they care about is rarely completely severed. This is what is meant by consistency through distance, an often subtle yet profoundly revealing sign that an avoidant is secretly in love. On the surface, it may seem like they are detached, emotionally unavailable, or even disinterested. You might notice long periods without contact, delayed responses, or apparent withdrawal. When intimacy increases, to the untrained eye, these behaviors can feel like rejection, leaving the partner questioning their value and the strength of the bond. Yet, beneath this distance lies a quiet, steadfast form of commitment that doesn't always wear the loud, obvious markers of traditional love. Avoidants are deeply conscious of their need for autonomy. They have learned, often through early experiences or past relationships, that closeness can feel suffocating or threatening to their sense of self. Intimacy, for them, is not a straightforward expression of love. It is a negotiation between desire and fear. Yet, even while negotiating this internal struggle, they find ways to remain present in your life. Their love manifests in ways that are indirect but meaningful, a thoughtful message after days of silence, a phone call just to check in, remembering important dates, or showing up when you are in need. These actions, though subtle, indicate that even their distance has boundaries and structure guided by care. One of the most powerful aspects of consistency through distance is the way it reveals intention. Avoidants may not always articulate their feelings, but their actions tell a story. A text sent in the middle of a chaotic day, a willingness to meet halfway despite discomfort, or quietly solving problems that affect you. All of these reveal a deliberate effort to maintain connection without surrendering their need for space. Love, in their world, is less about verbal affirmation and more about demonstrating care while respecting their own boundaries. This form of love may not always be loud or immediate, but it is enduring and persistent, quietly asserting itself in ways that are profoundly reliable. Consistency through distance also challenges the way many people understand attachment and connection. Most of us are wired to expect love in direct, tangible expressions, constant attention, verbal assurances, frequent physical closeness. For the avoidant, love is different. It is measured, intentional, and often indirect. By creating space, they are not pushing you away entirely. They are creating a rhythm where they can engage with the world and with their emotions safely while still honoring their affection for you. This paradox can be confusing, but it is also a sign of deep emotional intelligence, a negotiation between vulnerability and self-preservation that requires courage and awareness. Furthermore, these subtle acts of consistency are powerful indicators of trust. Avoidants often struggle with dependency and fear of engulfment, so when they take actions to maintain connection despite these fears, it is a sign that they are working through their internal conflicts to keep you in their life. Each small gesture, showing up for an event, remembering a detail you mentioned months ago, sending a supportive message, is evidence of their internal effort to bridge the gap between love and fear. While they may not verbalize "I love you" with ease, these consistent behaviors are a testament to their commitment and emotional investment. Understanding this consistency requires patience, perspective, and a shift in how love is perceived. Love does not always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it is quiet, measured, and even hidden behind protective barriers. Observing an avoidant's consistent engagement, even when it seems indirect, is recognizing that their love is there, quietly guiding their actions. It is a love that persists through self-doubt, fear, and internal conflict. A love that is patient, enduring, and often stronger than it appears. By paying attention to these patterns, one can see the truth behind their behavior. The avoidant is not absent in their affection. They are present in the ways that their heart allows. They demonstrate that love does not need constant visibility to be real, and that consistency, even in distance, is one of the most profound expressions of devotion and trust. When it comes to avoidance, words are often not the currency of love. They may speak little. They may avoid declarations. And sometimes they may even appear emotionally detached, but their love is rarely absent. It is expressed through actions, small gestures, and quiet demonstrations that speak louder than any phrase could. Understanding that actions outweigh words for an avoidant is a fundamental insight into how they love, and it challenges conventional ideas about emotional expression in relationships. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, verbalizing deep feelings can feel dangerous. Saying "I love you" or expressing vulnerability requires them to step into a space of exposure that they have been conditioned to fear. Over time, they learn to protect themselves from this discomfort by relying on behavior rather than speech to communicate. This does not mean their love is weaker or that it is less real. It simply means that their heart expresses itself differently. Every small act of care, whether remembering a detail about your life, showing up during a challenging moment, or making an effort to support your goals, is a profound declaration of love. Consider the subtle ways avoidants show affection. They might notice when you need help and quietly take action without being asked. They might make sacrifices or adjustments in their own schedule to be present for you. They might prioritize your well-being in ways that are not dramatic, but consistent, like sending a message to check on you during a stressful day or providing solutions when you are struggling. These actions are deliberate. They are evidence of love that transcends words. In fact, for many avoidants, these tangible demonstrations carry more weight than verbal expressions, because action requires commitment and accountability, while words alone can feel transient or performative. One of the most important principles in recognizing an avoidant's love is understanding that their actions often require significant internal effort. Each time an avoidant engages in an act of care, they are navigating a landscape of fear, resistance, and self-protection. To the outside observer, it might seem ordinary, routine, or even minimal, but behind that action is a choice, a conscious decision to prioritize connection over their instinct to retreat. Every small step toward closeness is a triumph over fear, a quiet victory that reflects emotional depth and commitment. This is why, in relationships with avoidance, noticing and appreciating these actions is essential. Love expressed through action demands recognition. because it is often invisible to those expecting overt verbal affirmation. Another aspect of action-based love is reliability. Avoidants often demonstrate love by being dependable in ways that align with their values and comfort. They may not provide constant emotional commentary, but they consistently show up when it matters most. This could mean being there during a crisis, honoring commitments, or protecting the relationship in subtle, unspoken ways. Their love is steadfast, not because it is loud or dramatic, but because it endures through consistency and intention. Each act, no matter how small, is a testament to their care and loyalty. It's also important to recognize that this type of love can be transformative. When someone understands that avoidants express their hearts through actions rather than words, it shifts the lens through which we interpret the relationship. The frustration or uncertainty, often associated with emotional withdrawal, gives way to appreciation for the quiet strength of their affection. By observing their behaviors closely, one can uncover a depth of care that words alone might never reveal. Ultimately, actions over words are not a limitation. They are a form of authenticity. Avoidants are often unwilling or unable to speak love in conventional ways, but their love exists in the way they choose to engage with you, protect you, and support you. Recognizing these signs requires patience, awareness, and sensitivity, but doing so opens the door to a profound understanding of their heart. Love expressed through actions is a love that is steady, intentional, and enduring, often carrying more weight than any spoken declaration could ever achieve. The internal conflict between fear and desire is one of the defining characteristics of someone with an avoidant attachment style, and it is particularly evident when they secretly love someone. Unlike those who freely express affection, avoidants live with a constant push and pull inside themselves, a dynamic that can appear confusing or contradictory to their partners. On the one hand, they feel a deep longing for connection, closeness, and intimacy, the very things that most people associate with love. On the other hand, they are gripped by fear of losing control, fear of vulnerability, fear of being dependent, and fear of getting hurt. This internal battle shapes almost every interaction they have in a relationship, creating patterns that can be hard to interpret, even for the people they care about most. When an avoidant feels love, it often triggers their protective instincts. Love, in its purest form, demands openness, emotional availability, and trust. For someone who has been conditioned to associate vulnerability with danger, these demands can feel threatening. Their desire to connect clashes with the ingrained belief that intimacy equals risk. As a result, they may retreat, create distance, or appear indifferent, even while their heart is fully invested. This paradoxical behavior is not a lack of love. It is love wrestling with fear. Every time they pull back, it is not because they do not care, but because they are attempting to navigate the emotional intensity that love has awakened in them. This conflict is often invisible to their partners. Outsiders may see an avoidance withdrawal as rejection, thinking the relationship is in jeopardy, when in reality, it is a signal of deep internal struggle. The avoidant is torn between the magnetic pull of desire, the urge to be close, to nurture, to share, and the magnetic push of fear, which demands safety, self-protection, and emotional distance. This tension creates a dance of approach and retreat, a rhythm that, while frustrating, is also a testament to the depth of their feelings. Each moment of approach, no matter how brief or tentative, is a victory over their internal fears and a demonstration of the love that exists beneath the surface. The internal conflict between fear and desire also illuminates why avoidants often express love in indirect ways. They may avoid overt declarations of affection, but their actions often speak volumes. They remember important details about you, make efforts to show up during critical moments, or subtly adjust their behavior to accommodate your needs. These acts are a manifestation of desire tempered by fear. They are ways to connect while managing the risk of emotional overwhelm. Love, in this context, becomes less about words and more about careful, deliberate choices that bridge the gap between longing and safety. Understanding this conflict requires a perspective shift for those in relationships with avoidance. Rather than interpreting withdrawal as disinterest or detachment, it is more accurate to see it as a protective mechanism triggered by the intensity of their emotions. Their fear does not negate their love. It is a natural response to it. In fact, the very presence of fear is often an indicator of how deeply they care. Someone indifferent does not experience this push and pull. They simply do not invest emotionally at all. Avoidants, by contrast, are fully engaged in their internal struggle, even when it manifests as apparent distance. The interplay of fear and desire also provides insight into growth and transformation in relationships with avoidants. Each time they manage to overcome their fear and take a step toward emotional intimacy, they are engaging in profound personal work. They are learning to tolerate vulnerability, to trust, and to recognize that love is not inherently dangerous. Every small step, whether it is initiating conversation, expressing concern, or sharing a feeling, is a significant breakthrough in this internal battle. Ultimately, the internal conflict between fear and desire is a defining signature of avoidant love. It explains the apparent contradictions in their behavior, the push-pull dynamics, and the subtle, often indirect ways they express care. By recognizing this struggle, one gains not only clarity but also compassion, understanding that their love is not absent but intricately woven with caution, courage, and the slow but steady pursuit of connection. This conflict, when approached with patience and insight, reveals the depth, complexity, and transformative potential of the love that exists within an avoidant heart. Growth through trust is perhaps one of the most profound indicators that an avoidant is secretly in love. Avoidants are not naturally inclined to open themselves up emotionally. For them, trust is not automatic. It is earned slowly, deliberately, and often through repeated demonstrations of safety and reliability. Love, in its purest form, requires vulnerability, the willingness to expose one's heart without a guarantee of reciprocity. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this vulnerability can feel like stepping off a cliff, and so they move cautiously, testing the waters before allowing themselves to fully engage. When an avoidant begins to share their inner world, even in small doses, it is a monumental act of trust and a clear reflection of their love. Avoidants have often learned that emotional openness carries risk. They may have experienced rejection, inconsistency, or emotional neglect earlier in life, leading them to associate closeness with pain. As a result, they build psychological and emotional walls to protect themselves. These walls are not meant to keep people out forever. They are survival mechanisms designed to prevent further hurt. When someone breaks through those walls, it is a testament to the trust that has been cultivated, and trust for an avoidant is inseparable from love. Every time an avoidant shares a private thought, admits a fear, or expresses a feeling, it represents an enormous internal shift. To an outside observer, it may seem minor, but for the avoidant, it is a deliberate decision to risk exposure. It is their way of saying, I trust you enough to let you see me as I truly am. And trust, when viewed through the lens of an avoidant psychology, is one of the deepest forms of love. It is love that does not need to be loudly proclaimed because the act of opening up itself speaks volumes. Growth through trust is not instantaneous, it is a gradual process. An avoidant may begin by sharing small, seemingly insignificant details about their life, their preferences, or their fears. Each small disclosure is a step forward, a piece of their inner world that they are willing to reveal. Over time, as they witness the response to their vulnerability, acceptance, patience, and respect, they become more willing to expand the boundaries of their emotional openness. This incremental progression is not a flaw or a limitation. It is a manifestation of their inner courage and a clear signal of affection. The deeper the trust they extend, the deeper the love they are demonstrating. This principle also highlights the importance of patience and consistency from the partner. Avoidants often need time to feel safe enough to reveal themselves fully. Pressuring them to open up prematurely can trigger their defenses, leading to withdrawal or resistance. However, when a partner demonstrates understanding, stability, and non-judgmental support, it creates an environment where trust can flourish. In this environment, love is not forced. It grows organically through repeated experiences of safety and acceptance. Every small act of trust granted by the avoidant is a building block, reinforcing the foundation of a deeper, more authentic connection. Furthermore, growth through trust has a transformative impact not just on the avoidant, but on the relationship itself. Each act of vulnerability strengthens the bond, creates intimacy, and fosters mutual understanding. It turns love into a living, evolving force rather than a static emotion. It allows the avoidant to move beyond fear and resistance, and it allows the partner to witness the authentic expression of care that is often hidden beneath layers of self-protection. Ultimately, the willingness of an avoidant to grow through trust is one of the clearest indicators that their love is real. Every shared thought, every disclosed fear, every act of vulnerability is not just an emotional gesture. It is a declaration of commitment and faith. It signifies that the avoidant sees you as safe, valued, and worthy of their heart. And in this careful, deliberate opening, love finds its most profound expression, quiet, courageous, and transformative. Silent protection is one of the most profound yet easily overlooked signs that an avoidant is secretly in love. Unlike those who express care through words, romantic gestures, or constant attention, avoidants often demonstrate their affection through subtle, quiet acts that prioritize your well-being while maintaining emotional distance. This is not a love that shouts or demands recognition. It is a love that operates behind the scenes, protective and steady, a demonstration of care without the vulnerability of overt emotional exposure. Understanding this behavior requires a shift in perspective, recognizing that their love often manifests as safeguarding rather than verbal affirmation. Avoidants are naturally cautious when it comes to emotional intimacy. They fear vulnerability because they equate it with exposure to potential pain or loss. This fear, however, does not prevent them from caring deeply. Instead, it channels their love into actions that feel safe to them, actions that provide security, guidance, or support without forcing them to openly express feelings they are not yet comfortable verbalizing. When an avoidant takes steps to ensure your comfort, safety, or happiness, it is a direct reflection of their affection. They may not say, "I love you," but every action that shields you from harm or difficulty is an unspoken expression of deep commitment. Consider the ways an avoidant might demonstrate silent protection. They might intervene in situations that could cause you stress, offer practical help when you are struggling, or subtly remove obstacles that could impact your life. They might listen attentively when you share challenges, provide solutions without demanding attention, or offer guidance when you are uncertain. These acts are intentional. They require awareness, effort, and a willingness to engage emotionally without opening themselves fully. Each gesture, no matter how understated, is a signal that they care and that they are willing to invest in your well-being, even while maintaining the boundaries that make them feel safe. Silent protection also reflects a form of emotional intelligence that is characteristic of avoidance in love. Because they struggle with overt emotional expression, they find alternative ways to demonstrate care. By focusing on actions rather than words, they are able to navigate their fears while still honoring the relationship. They protect you because they are attuned to your needs, sensitive to your vulnerabilities, and willing to step in when necessary, all without jeopardizing their own emotional equilibrium. It is a love that is practical yet profoundly meaningful, quiet yet deeply significant. Another key aspect of silent protection is its consistency. Avoidance may not offer constant affirmation, but their protective behaviors are often reliable. They may appear intermittent in the emotional sense, but when it comes to supporting and safeguarding you, they act with deliberation and care. This consistency is a form of devotion. It is a way of saying without words, "I see you. I care about your safety and well-being. I am here, even if I cannot always say it out loud." Their love becomes measurable, not by frequency of words, but by the presence of thoughtful, intentional actions that speak to their dedication. Silent protection also reflects courage. Every act of care requires an avoidant to confront their own discomfort, to step out of their instinctive retreat, and to engage in a way that exposes them to emotional proximity. Each time they intervene, support, or guide, they are exercising restraint over their fear and choosing love as a higher priority. In this sense, their protective behavior is both an expression of love and a personal triumph over the limitations imposed by their attachment patterns. Ultimately, silent protection reveals the heart of an avoidance love. It is love expressed without the need for applause. Love that prioritizes your well-being even at the cost of their own comfort, and love that communicates more profoundly through action than through words. Recognizing these quiet, intentional gestures is essential to understanding the depth of their affection. Behind the apparent distance, there is a steadfast, nurturing presence, a protective force that quietly asserts, "You are valued, you are safe, and you are loved." In recognizing the subtle signs of an avoidance love, from consistency through distance to actions over words, the dance of fear and desire, growth through trust and silent protection, we uncover a profound truth. Love often speaks softly but powerfully, through courage, patience, and intentional care. When we learn to see beyond the surface, we witness a heart that loves deeply even when it fears exposure. Thank you for opening yourself to this understanding, for embracing the wisdom and patience, and for honoring the quiet, transformative power of love in all its forms.